Okay, so I have cured my audio problem. I am now using a Tascam, I believe it's a D60 Mark II audio recording device. In fact, I will take a picture of that so you fine folks can see that fancy chunk of hardware that I bought. We'll zoom in. Got a photograph of that thing. And we'll put it right there. Work for you guys? Works for me. Okay, so anyway, welcome to part 3 of the PrintNC build series. The intent of this episode was originally to only do steel preparation, okay? Cleaning it, marking it, maybe a little drilling. But I went through the wiki and actually printed myself a manual on the assembly. And I was going through the manual today and making notes and found that my original path was not going to work because there's assembly steps interspersed with the prepping and the drilling and the things. So what we're going to start today is the build. It's not going to be a build to let's test it and see if it moves. I'm going to be doing all of the assembly up to a point, and then I have to take everything apart because I want all my steel to be painted. You're going to run into the same issue. You're going to put it together, make sure it's right, then you got to take it all apart and paint it. The reason that I'm doing it that way is that by doing all the marking and the drilling and the tapping now, I don't have to worry about marring the paint. There will be times where there's holes that have to be drilled and threaded after the painting process, but that's also after most of the assembly process. So I'll come to those as I run into them, or I'll describe them as I run into them. There are things like the installation of the proximity sensors and the installation of the supports for the cable chain that supports all the wiring going down the side and across the y-axis of the machine that you really don't do until you're almost done. I think it's an error in the assembly instructions, simply because it would be better off if you've got all your stuff drilled and tapped before you actually begin assembly, or at least before you need to tear things down and paint. The E-chain support and the supports for the proximity sensors look like they came late in the design and in the authorship of the wiki. So those things are kind of out of order, I feel. Anyway, we're not going to worry about that right now. I've got my list of tasks that I'm going to try to cover today. This episode will be multi-part. I guarantee it. There's just too much going on for me to compress this into a single episode of any sane length and still provide you folks with enough detail to know what the hell's going on. So the first thing I want you to do is print your assembly tools, okay? And I'm going to show you those right now. Okay, so here's my box of assembly tools. This is what they kind of look like, okay? These are 3D printed, and they're designed to help you make accurate marks on your steel so you properly drill and tap the holes where they exactly need to be. And here is an example of one of those parts right there. Come on, you little monster, focus. You can see this is assembly component number 2, and the holes you're going to be drilling are 6.5 millimeters, okay? And you're going to want this as well. Either print it or have a web browser open to it, or your iPad or your Android tablet open to it. We're starting off with, after we clean the steel, this first step here, the x-axis frame prep. Forgot what it said. Okay, so, but like I said, go to the link in the description to find these parts. It's in the main PrintNC model. You'll need to extract them and get them all printed. You can print them out of PLA, ABS, whatever floats your boat. They just need to be accurate and strong. They don't have to be heat resistant. So another thing we're going to cover is cleaning the steel. Okay. As the steel comes to you, it's going to be dirty, unless you paid extra to have them clean mill scale off of it and whatnot. But you already know it's dirty because you picked it up and your hands are just black with this crap on there. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a can of acetone, something like what I'm about to show you here. In fact, I'm just going to bring my little card over here just to make things interesting and a little easier on me. And the camera doesn't show the card, so yay. So you're going to get yourself a can of acetone, okay? You're going to need that and some paper towel to clean your steel. This stuff is dirty. Like I said, it's really dirty. The good news is that because we're not going to be welding it, we really don't need to worry about cleaning the mill scale off, as long as you don't have mill scale on your steel that's flaking. If your mill scale, you do have mill scale on your steel and it is flaking, you're going to have to clean those parts off. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've already cleaned all the gunk off of this stuff once, but it needs it again. And after the drilling and the tapping happens and before the painting, you're going to have to clean it all off again, because you want to get all the tapping oil and drill oil or cutting fluid off your metal before you print it. That being said, paint it. That being said, painting this is entirely optional. It's up to you. I do it because I want it to look nice, and I've got a color scheme over here that I want to follow. If anybody's curious about that, blue and yellow were the original colors used by a Link flight simulator in like the mid to late 40s, early 50s. It's blue and yellow. It's also the colors that we chose when we formed the simpits.org organization back some 22 odd years ago. So that being said, let's see what else I've got on the list for you. So you've cleaned your steel. Now I have to show you what a deburring tool is, because you need to do that too. So we're going to do a jump cut. I'll be right back. Whee! The magic of editing. Ha! Okay, so this is a deburring tool. Okay? You're going to use this to clean out all the sharp edges on the inside of your steel. Okay? You just grab it and you pull it. Okay? Of course, much harder than I did. You'll run into a spot right here. Okay? There's kind of a ridge on the inside of the steel. It matches where the weld line is. You might want to file that down a little bit to make it easier to get your deburring tool past it. You want to do this both on the inside and the outside. The reason for that is you want to clean up the edges. You don't want to cut yourself. Trust me, cutting yourself with a piece of rusty steel is not in your best interest. And it'll make the parts safer to handle, easier to handle. It's not going to mar up your table when you're moving stuff around, things like that. Okay, next on the list. So, X and Y rollers. Let me see if I can't find those little goodies. Let's see here. We have two Y rollers, okay? And they look like that. And these are, for my build, these are 70 millimeters each. The trick is that both of the Y rollers and this X roller here, okay, must have one perfectly square face, okay? If it doesn't, you're going to have binding problems when you put the ball screw system together, okay? Because there's a nut plate that holds the ball screw nut that fits in this piece here, okay? And if it's off a little bit, the path the ball screw takes through the center of this is going to be off angle. And while it might not bind up at slow speed, it will bind up at high speed. And you run the risk of having your your carriage rack out of alignment, which could bend your ball screws or do other horrible things. So you need to make absolutely sure that at least one face of each roller carriage here, okay, is square. So put these over here. So what else do we have? Okay, now we're going to go through and mark the steel. The first step is the X-axis frame prep, and you're going to need the number 2 assembly tool, which is actually that first one I showed you here with the number 2 and the 6.5 millimeters. And you'll need a 1/8 inch center marking punch, okay? This punch is made out of soft steel, so all it's going to do is it's going to give you a mark that you can then hit again with a decent punch. The marking tools are soft and they're not going to make a good enough dent for you. These, however, will. I should also mention, or should have mentioned earlier, that these tools, their shape and size is dictated by the parameters that you entered into the Fusion 360 model. You didn't change any of those parameters. You need to go back into the wiki and start looking at the early steps to find out what you need to do to measure your steel to get that information into the model. Then regenerate the model so you get as accurate parts as you can get. So what we're going to do here is move on to doing the marking. And of course, Dummy here has forgotten his hammer, so I will be right back. Okay, so hammer. Now we're cooking with gas. So, according to the plans, we are going to start marking them. So what you're going to do is take your measurement tool and get it all nice and snug in there. And then, as I mentioned in previous videos, you're going to want to make one of these. Basically, all this is a tool to help you hold the center punch as perpendicular as you can, which makes for a good, accurate hole. Okay, so we go tap, tap. And hopefully that didn't move. So I have 5 very vague marks that I now have to reinforce with a decent punch. That wasn't expected. Okay, so I don't know if you can see how well it is in the camera, but I now have I now have 5 very well defined punch marks in the end of this metal. So what you need to do is do this on both ends. So we got 5 on this end. And make sure you don't flip the steel when you move it off the other end. And now we're going to do the same thing on this end. And you know, some people, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if your marker here is at all loose, tape it down, because you do not want it shifting at all. Okay, there's one complete one. Now I've got to go ahead and do the other 2 pieces. The instructions say to go ahead and drill these holes is 6.5 millimeters. None of the holes are to be tapped. Okay? And it shows here figure 2.1 on how to mark things with the punch. Or how to mark the thing. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so now we need to go to the drill press. And that will be fun. I'm going to set that up and I'll be back. I've got my drill press set up, as you can see. And I wanted to use the drill press because I want to make the straightest holes that I can. My accuracy is not so great because I only have one eye working most of the time, so I need all the help I can get. That's why I'm using the drill press. Fair warning, you will need cutting fluid for this because you're cutting steel. Your drill bits will last longer, your sanity will last longer, and your traps will last longer. My advice to you, when I start doing this, you'll see that I will put the tapping fluid down, or the cutting fluid, after I've centered the bit. That is to make sure that if I put too much oil down, I'm not missing my mark because of refraction through the oil. Don't ask me how I know about that. So let us begin the drilling. Since I've got my center hole queued up already, I'll mark that, hold that with the drill, lift it, put a little tapping fluid on there, and start the show. And there's one good one. And that is 5 holes. Looks like 5 good holes to me, but you know, since we have this fancy thing, let's use it again. And I should be able to see light through all 5 of those. In fact, I should be able to chase my little tool through all of them. Oh, that one's just a little bit off. But these are not to be threaded, they're just pass-through holes, so we're probably okay. Yeah, these are not to be threaded, so we're fine. I'm going to now do the other end. Like you didn't see that coming, right? Okay, let's clean up that mess. Check to make sure we've got good holes. Yep. Yep. Okay. So, now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. And I'll get back to you when it's time to do the 6.5 millimeter chase through these. Now I've got my 6.5 millimeter bit in, and we are going to get the rest of these holes done. Unlike the pilot holes, these holes go all the way through. And I can go ahead and put my cutting fluid on all the holes before we start. Probably should have oiled down underneath too, because, well, yeah, it needs it because it's loud. Toasty. Very toasty. Yep. Those holes in the bottom just look horrible. I need to get my deburring tool. Actually, no, I have got one of these that I will use. Clean this up a bit. Much nicer looking holes. Ugh, yeah. That could have ended not very good. And we'll do the same here. Okay, that's a little bit less sucky. Anyway, I'm going to do the rest of these and I'll be back. Okay, as you can see, all the holes are done. And we are going to go on to the next step in the next video because, well, this went on longer than I expected. So I'm going to cut it off here and I'll start off with a new video soon that hopefully there won't be the large delay that there was last time. So with that, I thank you guys for watching and I hope to see you soon.